Welcome to the Pragmatic Hero's Journey, a monthly podcast about becoming a pragmatic author, hosted by Tammy Corin and Tim Mitra. This episode was recorded on February 10, 2021. On this episode, Tammy and Tim talk with Crhis about his journey to becoming a pragmatic author. The Pragmatic Hero's Journey is owned and operated by the Pragmatic Programmers LLC, home of the Pragmatic Bookshelf. Founded by Andy Hunt and Dave Thomas, the Pragmatic Programmers has one simple goal: to improve the lives of professional developers.
Okay, you see, if you look at this picture of this laptop I just sent you.
Hey, look at that. It's a picture of a laptop.
So if you look on the, you see on the left-hand side, there's like a little bar, and on the right-hand side, there's another little bar.
Yes, I love bars.
There's a dock that runs right underneath it, and it has a whole bunch of ports on the back.
Oh, looks good.
Well,
what
I
about
gotta
it?
take one more picture.
You don't know.
Oh, too late.
No, hang on. I'll let him in.
It's too late.
No, it's not too late.
Well, it's too late.
Hi, Crhis. We're letting
baby.
you in, but Tim is showing me his ports, his
it's
docks, his
too
dongles,
late.
and I don't even know what else. He's sending me a picture,
So
but
we
hi.
really did try to-
Hi.
I don't know what he's sending. So we're having this argument about, now he's singing because he doesn't want to hear what I have to say. He's sending me pictures of his computer because we're talking about how, are you on Windows or Mac? First, I got to ask you that question.
Mac.
You're on Mac. Okay. So you'll know
can
what
stay.
we're
He
talking
can stay.
You can stay. So we're having this conversation about how he needs a new computer and I need a new computer.
No, I just got a new computer.
Well, what are you complaining about then?
Well, it's not an M1 computer.
Okay. So yeah. So, okay. Now
So
I
do
remember
need a new
how.
computer.
Yeah, you do. So now I remember how we got to this conversation. We're talking about how I need a new computer. See, I'm so self-centered. We're talking about how I need a new computer and I wanted an M1 and I almost bought a Mac, an M1, but I found out that the M1s that are currently out there don't have a MagSafe. And, being around so many animals in my house, I absolutely need a MagSafe.
This is why I got a MagSafe for mine, because my dog, no, I think my Roomba actually, it wasn't my dog. I shouldn't blame the dog, but my dog somebody knocked my computer off the thing. And now my USB cable, the end of it's all bent because it hit the ground on the computer.
I know, but I don't want that fake MagSafe dongle extra. Here's more money you need to spend on extra stuff that you really shouldn't have to spend your money on.
It was
so
like
you can
$20 on Amazon. Seriously.
Still. Anyway, our guest is here. We should probably stop bickering about M1s and MagSafes and, do what we did this podcast. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Wait, this already is the podcast.
I know it's recording. Hi, Crhis. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Thanks. Happy to be here.
So how are you?
Doing all right. Doing pretty well. Very busy. Very busy time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right.
Keeping busy.
What are you being busy on? Wait, that isn't even proper English. Who made that sentence? It wasn't me. Tim, stop putting sentences that don't make sense into my mouth.
Yeah. Who wrote this script?
Well, she edited it, so I can't,
Yeah, it's mostly work stuff. We've got 3 kids who are at home doing distance learning. Like that's taken a lot of work. We're building a tiny house in the backyard for my mother-in-law to be able to come and stay with us, but not like stay with us, And yeah, I like at work, we're hiring like crazy. This is SourceGraph for any engineers out there who are interested in an awesome place to work. Definitely hit us up, sourcegraph.com. And I'm learning the guitar, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah. See, now I want to ditch this show and just play guitar with everybody here.
Or just talk about playing guitar. Yeah.
We could do that too. But I guess we should sort of back up a little bit and introduce our listeners to our guest because, that's the professional thing to do. I'm just not really good at introductions. So, Crhis, if you wouldn't mind letting our listeners know who you are and what you do, I would be eternally grateful, as I'm sure our listeners would be, because they're probably like, what? Who's Crhis Pine? Who? What?
I know who Crhis Pine is, but that's not who we're talking to today.
No, I am other Crhis Pine. That's
Yes.
that's who I am on Twitter.
Yeah, I heard there was an other Crhis Pine, but to me, you're the Crhis Pine.
Well, that's how I feel too. Yeah. But Google seems to disagree. So I'm Crhis Pine. I'm an engineering manager at SourceGraph. More relevant to this conversation, I am the author of Learn to Program, which came out, the first edition came out in 2006. And the third edition is currently in beta and will be coming out soon.
So can I ask why, I mean, that's a long time for versions, but what's different about the third version? What was different about the second version?
So the second version came out, second edition came out right around when Ruby 2.0 came out, right. And we just had Ruby 3.0. And so it felt
coincides,
like, a good time to revamp it. And, but in the process of doing that, thanks to my amazing editor, I can't remember her name.
Who is that again?
I think this is like definitely the best version. There's a lot of improvements, and there's a new chapter which I'm excited about, and we reorganized it, and it's it really came together well.
So I remember back in my early life, probably around 2005, I think, which was not my early life, believe me. But I was looking at Ruby back then, I think it was relatively new around that time, I guess. I haven't really done much with it since, but
it was gaining popularity around then.
Right. Yeah, because it had really nice, clean looking, parsed code kind of thing, right?
Yeah. It's I mean, I think Ruby's was been around for, I don't know, maybe a decade or something before that. I'm not entirely sure. I heard about it in 2000, but it was Ruby on Rails that really propelled Ruby into the mainstream. And I'm not exactly sure when that happened. Probably around 2005-ish.
So the Rails was sort of the part that made it web friendly and all that kind of stuff. Is that the deal?
It made it was a very web friendly, or a user friendly web framework.
So let me ask you, when you said 2006 was the first edition, is that when you did the first Learn to Program book using Ruby?
Yeah, that's when that's when the print version came out. I started working on it in 2002 or 2003.
Well, now I have a whole bunch of different questions, but let me start with the one that was in my head.
Yeah.
Why Ruby for learning programming? What made you decide that this was the language you wanted to teach new people to programming to learn in? Like, why not some other language? What drove you to Ruby as your choice to teach people to program?
That's a great question. And my answer is that it's like, it's actually, it was almost the opposite of that. I got really into Ruby and I liked it. And I always love teaching anything I know. I'll try to teach anyone. And so I found myself teaching programming, and I was teaching in C, and that was very challenging. And then I started teaching someone in Ruby, and that went so well. And I was like, of course, this is the perfect language for learning to program. And so from that, like it's very simple. There's not, you don't need to write a whole lot of code to get something done. It was, mature enough that it had like nice error messages and things like that. It was, like fairly forgiving, and all of that is great for like, just not having to deal with a bunch of like needless garbage. Do you need a semicolon here, or, does this part require parentheses, or the parentheses optional? In some places they're optional, but in some places they're not. And like just a whole class of things that you just didn't need to worry about. And that stuff that like working programmers, like that stuff isn't a big deal for us, but for someone who's just learning, there's so many new concepts that it's like, yeah, let's just get rid of as much of the of the needless junk and just really pare it down. And what would like a perfect language to learn how to program look like? And hey, it's already there. It's Ruby. And so I started working on a tutorial that I was just putting on my own website, just like chapter by chapter. And that started in 2003.
How did you go from tutorial writing to book writing?
I accidentally. I mean, I still have a hard time thinking of myself as an author. Like I never set out to write this book. I was just writing down ideas and put them online and I'd point people at them and say, hey, you know, like, what do you think? And they'd say, well, I got really stuck on this part. And I'd be like, oh yeah, that part was crappy. I can do better than that. And then I'd rewrite it. And that just went on for like 3 years until I actually had, you know, like 10 or 12 chapters, and it was pretty good. Like at that point, it was pretty good. You know, some 100 revisions later. And that's when I was contacted by a publisher who wanted to put it in print. And I thought, well, that's crazy. I didn't ever think that anyone would want that, but cool. But here's the thing. It's super important that that my website stays up, because like it was getting a lot of traffic, and it's this wonderful free resource that anyone anywhere in the world could use to learn to program. And that was like, I mean, that was why I did it. I wanted to teach people how to program. And the publisher said, no way. You know, like if you give it to us, like we're going to give you money and you have to take the website down. And I'm just like, well, I'm not going to do that. So I said no. And then a couple months later, a second publisher came along. Same thing. They said no. And then a few months after that, Dave Thomas reached out on I think it was on the Ruby Talk mailing list, saying that he was thinking about this Facets of Ruby series, and is there anyone interested in that? And I was like, well, okay. Now that it was in my head that, oh, people might actually want to put this into a book, I said, yeah, I would do it. But here's the thing. I want the website to stay up. And Dave, being the great guy he is, was like, yeah, absolutely. No problem. I mean, an earlier version of his book of the pickaxe is still online. And so he was like, okay, here's the deal. You know, we need you to put some new content in there so that there's like some value add here, some like reason why people with money can spend it on this. But like, were you going to add anything more to the online version, or did you consider it done? And I said, yeah, I considered it done. So he's like, okay, well, here's the deal. Anything beyond this point goes into the book only. How does that sound? And I was like, that sounds amazing. So that's how I became an author, I guess.
You mentioned that you don't see yourself as an author, and I hear that a lot. I don't know, Tim, do you hear that a lot from people who are, whether they're a developer or an author or an artist? Do you hear people say to you, or do you even think yourself, gosh, I'm not this thing that everyone thinks that I am?
Yeah, no, I think I do suffer from that too. And that, you know, I think a lot of people, what people see of you and think of you is different than what you perhaps think of yourself, right? You know, because I'm actually working as a technical writer right now too, and I never would have thought, like, I got like 50% in grade 11 English. You know, there's no way that I could be an author, right?
Right. Yeah. I actually make fun of my English teacher in the book.
Yeah.
Can you believe I'm a published author now? Ha.
Yeah. So I do want to go back and sort of just pick apart this a bit too, because I mean, I've been involved in writing books, but I've never actually written a book, and I just see it as this sort of insurmountable hill right now, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I would guess that the first version of the book was particularly tough to write. Did you find the second and third versions easier, having done it once? I mean, you know,
I don't know that I found any of them really difficult. The first one probably would have been hard if I was sitting down and saying, hey, I'm going to write a book, but I wasn't. It was just something I was doing in my spare time over the course of years.
So was there any pressure to get the book done in a timely fashion? Like, did they say you've got 2 months to do this or something?
Oh, at the end there was, and that was, oh yeah, that was actually a crazy time. I can't believe I almost forgot this. So after reaching this agreement with Pragprog that, you know, yes, they will publish Learn to Program, with the agreement, like I said, that we're going to add some new content to it. Now I needed to write that content, and at the same time, we had a newborn baby and a 2-year-old, and we were planning, like I'd quit my job and we were moving to Norway, and all of that was happening at the same time. And so we were like, you know, like our cats were going into quarantine, and all of our stuff was packed up, and some of it was going to Illinois and some of it was going to Norway. And it was a mess. I think if I had nothing else going on and I had just been able to write, I really enjoy writing. Like the writing isn't hard.
But unlike those other, I'm doing air quotes now, authors, you haven't done, you've done the one book. Have you done like multiple, have you done other books on different subjects or?
No. And this is another one. Okay. So now we're going to a place of shame here. And I want to counterbalance this by saying that at no point am I putting down my book. I think that Learn to Program is an excellent book, not because I did a great job, but because I did 100 versions of it. And like, that makes a huge, huge difference. Iterate. And like, the result was really good. But I feel like author is like this, I don't know, it feels like an identity, not like a statement about the artifact that I produced, but it's about my identity. And like, I never successfully sat down and said, I'm going to write a book. I did unsuccessfully sit down and say, I'm going to write a book. This was about 7 years ago, I think. 8 years ago. I said, you know what? I'm going to do like a follow-up to Learn to Program. I'm going to call it Learn to Program Games. I rewrote the first third of the book, I think 4 times. I actually had a contract with Pragprog, and ultimately it was just like, look, I can't finish this book. Like I don't know what my block was, but like it just never came together. And that was really hard. That was really hard for me to like stomach that.
So I was trained as an artist, as you know, in fine arts and stuff like that. And every artist knows that, you know, you work on something and you can continue to work on it. At some point, somebody has to hit you over the head and say, it's done, stop. Right. And I know as a programmer, when I write code, there's always, I can always think of a better way. Even though I've shipped the product, I can think of a better way or some new improvement or whatever. Do you feel that way about this book? I mean, having published the first book, did you have any sort of niggling feelings that you probably could have done something better, or over time found that things could be done better? Or, I
mean, there's a drift that happens over time. So like, as I was doing the 3rd edition, I was going back and looking at the 2nd edition being like, that's not a funny joke. Why did I write that? You know, or like, that's not how I would phrase things. Why did I say that? Just because, you know, time has changed and the world has changed and I've changed. And, but like with each edition, by the time it came out, no, I think I was really, really happy with each of them.
Cool. All right. So I have a question. I guess we're going to try and sell a book here.
Yeah.
What's the entry level for somebody who wants to learn how to program with your book? Like, what do they need to have? Particular environment, or, you know, how do they get from, you know, reading about the code to actually writing it?
Like literally nothing is assumed.
Okay.
Anyone can pick up this book.
Right.
Like that was the whole point. That was the whole point.
So it doesn't matter if you want Windows or a Mac or.
Nope. Doesn't matter. Like I have a different appendix for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So right. Yeah, it's like, that was why I had to write this. That was why, like at the beginning in 2003, I just couldn't stop from doing this because I'm like, the world needs this. You know, there's so many tutorials online of, you know, varying levels of quality, widely varying levels of quality, about like how to program in this language, how to program in that language. But they all kind of assumed that you already knew how to program and they already knew a fair amount about computers. And I just thought, Ruby's so easy. Like you don't need to know any of this stuff if only someone would just set that ramp there for you, And so like that was like why I wrote the book. I wrote it specifically for people who didn't know anything about programming. Like I explain what a text editor is. I explain why you want to use a text editor and not like,
Word.
Google Docs or something, Yeah, Word. Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the first edition, I talked about Word. Yeah.
How did you get involved in programming in general? Like, I want to back up a little bit and talk about little Crhis. Like, what was little Crhis doing?
I feel like I kind of cheated and lied my way in. I mean, not entirely, but no, I'm sure this is just my imposter syndrome talking again. But so in college, I was a math major and really didn't do any programming. I mean, I think I did like a tiny bit and it was bad. And my life plan was like, I'm going to be a math professor. Like I'd wanted that since I was 3 years old. I'm going to be a math professor. And somewhere in the middle of getting my bachelor's, I was like, I hung out with professors and I understood a lot of the politics and I spent a lot of time grading papers at that point. And I'm like, I do not want to do this with my life. But this is like a crisis for me, like Chris Pine always knew what he was going to do, like my whole life was mapped out and then suddenly it's gone. And what am I going to do? And also in college, I was spending a lot of time playing video games and I thought, well, I don't know, maybe I'll go program video games. That sounds pretty cool. And I really like Civilization. So I was like, oh, I'll go reach out to, Firaxis Games where Sid Meier works and see if, they're hiring. And they were not. Through an incredible twist of fate. And so Firaxis Games is in Baltimore, Maryland. I was in Portland, Oregon. So, thousands of miles away. And that was like a 20-person company. And I was attending this tiny liberal arts college in Portland. As luck would have it, the career counselor, I think there was only one at the time, at Reed College happened to be old friends with the CEO of Firaxis Games.
Okay.
So, so she said, she like reached out and said, hey, I've got a student here who's, a big fan of your games. And, could he come out and meet with you, maybe get an internship? And they were like, we don't really have an internship program, but yeah, he can fly out and meet with us. I was dirt poor. I got my first credit card, which had a $300 limit so that I could pay for the plane ticket to go out there. This was in 98. Plane tickets were fairly cheap back then. And met with them. And I guess it went well because they offered me an internship. And I guess the internship went well because then they offered me a job. And that's how I got into programming. But like, here's the crazy thing. I said, like, I'm here as like, I want to get into programming. Like I want to be a game programmer. That's why I'm here. At no point did anyone ask me, do you know how to program? And I would have been honest. I would have said no. Like they didn't give me any kind of, like, it was just an internship. So there was no coding challenge or anything like that. They just let me show up. And then fortunately they had several math problems that none of them were able to solve. And for me, they were really easy, but the problem is that they showed me the code. They're like, there's something wrong with the math in this code. And I'm like, okay, well, so now I need to learn how to code because, again, the math part was easy, but I had to learn how to code and did just by mostly looking at the C code of game programmers, which was kind of a horrific thing. But I don't know, here I am. I guess it all worked out.
So how do you take the jump from mathematics and finding yourself in this situation where you have to sort of read through code and figure it out on your own so that you can answer these questions to someone who writes this series of blog posts about teaching other people how to code in your language of choice and then going off to making that into a book. I mean, I know that you had gotten some feedback from the community, but I guess my real question underneath all of this babbling that I'm doing right now is, how do you go from being in this company doing the code to, hey, I think I want to teach people how to code, and then writing those series of blog posts?
I was always teaching people stuff. Like in high school, I was like leading study groups and things. And then in college, I started teaching gifted children who were like in their gifted classes, and they're getting kind of bored and they're maybe causing problems. So I started like just doing individual tutoring to kind of help them move at the speed that they want. And then after I graduated and moved out to Baltimore, I started doing that there as well. And so that's when I started teaching programming, was basically as soon as I knew any programming, and had students around, had people around who were willing to learn how to program, then I just started working on it.
You're like, hey, check out this stuff I learned. Do you want to learn it too?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm always, I don't know, I'm in this, and maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a, oh, this is fascinating. This never occurred to me, but maybe there's some weird connection between my imposter syndrome and my like desire to teach, is because I kind of go through this world thinking that I'm surrounded by all these amazing, brilliant people who know how to do these amazing, incredible, impossible things. And then I learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube, and I'm like, this isn't that hard. And then I learn how to play a guitar, and I'm like, oh, I thought, I don't know, I just assumed it was way harder than it is. I'm not any good at a guitar or anything, but I can play a song, and I didn't think that I could do that. I didn't think that that's a thing that I would ever be able to do. And so, or programming or whatever. And so basically, as soon as I learn something, I'm trying to find people to teach, because I'm so delighted. I'm like, oh my God, this is way easier than I thought it was. You can totally do this too.
As someone who also teaches and also suffers from imposter syndrome, and also has this desire to level up other individuals around me, I can completely 100% identify with what you're saying. And the one thing that has always come back, and sort of like a repeating mantra for me, is that the best way to learn is to teach.
Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, that's definitely when I started working on the tutorial that then became the book. That's what it was. I was just like, this, it seemed like it was this impenetrable wall. But then once I got through, I'm like, oh, other people could totally do this. But like, there wasn't a path. No one had like lined the path. And so you couldn't see the way through. And that was what I wanted to do, was just illuminate that path. And it was hugely rewarding. I put my email address in the back of the book, and so got thousands and thousands of emails. And some of them were so, I mean, they were like, I think the youngest was maybe like a 8 or 9 year old, and the oldest was 93. He was very proud to have learned to program. I remember there was one person who, after reading my book, and she was, I think she was in her 30s or 40s, middle-aged, said, I didn't think that I could learn how to program, and now I can program. And because of that, like just the fact that like this impossible thing is something that I can now do, I decided to go out and get my driver's license, which I've never thought I could do. And now I have a driver's license. And that just blew my mind. You write something, you send it out into the world, and it's like, so often you don't know what impact it has. Like, I can talk about some book that I read and how great it is. But like, if I don't find some way to get in touch with the author, like, they'll never know.
Right.
But yeah, I put my email address in the back. And so I got a lot of really touching emails.
What do you recommend for people who may not have anything published yet, whether it be blog posts or, they don't have any connections, or I guess, again, here's my hidden question is what do you recommend to people who are wanting to get into becoming an author and a writer and break past this imposter syndrome, which apparently for some of us is something we just carry around in our backpacks. But how do you recommend someone who's interested in creating a book move forward with that idea? And let me rephrase that. I don't want to tie it to just a book. I want to tie it to people who want to go out and share their knowledge. So how would you recommend someone who has something that they want to share? How would they go about doing that? How would they go about getting it out to the world? I made it bigger.
Yeah. And
start a website.
And I hate answering. It depends,
Oh goodness. Were you talking to Vicky, our last guest? Because that was her favorite.
The answer is always it depends.
Yeah. And of course it depends. I feel like I can answer personally for myself and hope that this will resonate with some people. But I feel like, I don't know. Everyone comes to this. I would start by asking, why is this a thing you think you want to do? Not to discourage them, but just like honestly, like, where does this passion come from? Because for me, it's the delight of like showing people they can do things that they didn't know that they could do, or didn't think that they would be able to do. So like, you want to keep coming back to that, to like, what is it that's driving you? Because it is the easiest thing in the world to not write a book, It is the easiest thing in the world to just not do it.
To not write a book. I'm not writing one right now.
Yes.
I'm an awesome
I'm
not
currently
writer.
not writing 3 books.
Right.
Yeah. So like the most important thing I think is just to not stop. Second is put it in front of as many people as you can, as early as you can, and as often as you can. At least with me, again, I don't know that I had any particular talent for writing or for explaining things, but like with enough persistence and enough iterating, like it became really one of the best books about learning to program that, ever, I think.
Good. Well, you got to blow your own horn. That's for sure.
Yeah. I may not be an author, but I wrote a hell of a good book.
That's the first step.
Eventually wrote a good book. So I think that's that's a lot of it. Like, is it going to be a book? Like, deciding on what format it's going to be. Is it going to be a book? Is it going to be a series of blog posts? Is it going to be, YouTube videos or whatever? Like, that seems less important. Just get something out there and get feedback on it and iterate based on that feedback. I think teaching especially is challenging because you're catering to a mindset of someone who doesn't know these things, but the whole point that you're teaching it is because you do know it. And it's so easy that, like, the way that different concepts connect to each other, it's so easy to say, oh, I don't know if I can think of an example, something about, functions, and I'm talking about parameters and return values. And they're like, okay, but what's a parameter and what's a return value? Like, oh yeah, I guess I shouldn't talk about what tail position means yet. So like the first thing you need to do is like learn how to forget everything that you know, and then figure out how you'd like to learn it back again. But that's really hard. At least for me, it's hard to do that, like just sitting alone. But I can attempt something sitting alone and then put it in front of people, and they'd say, okay, I got stuck on the 3rd paragraph. And I'm like, okay, of course you did. Now that you say that, I can see it. Yeah, because I didn't explain X. Okay, so now I'm going to explain X and figure out how to work that in. And now they get stuck in the 4th paragraph, and just continue until you get through all the paragraphs in a book.
I have a quick question. We're going to move to a different section of the show, but Norway, can you tell us about Norway?
Norway's great. Loved it there.
Wait, where's Norway? I'm not, no, don't make fun of me.
No, seriously.
I can Google it. I know it's on the world somewhere on the earth.
It is.
It's over there that way.
It's north.
Thanks.
Which is why it's called Norway.
So how did you end up in Norway? Is I guess my question.
We were, I mean, partly we're looking for adventure. And so I started looking for jobs in various places. And I was looking, as I mentioned, we had like a baby and a toddler. And so we thought, oh, it would be cool to move somewhere where English is not the native tongue, so that our children would grow up bilingual. Like that would be super cool. My wife's a linguist. And so we were very excited about that idea. And I was looking for companies that worked, that made a product that I loved. And one of those, I was a huge fan of the Opera browser. And so, and Opera's based in Oslo. And so applied, got the job, and we just picked up and moved to Norway.
Is it written in Ruby?
And, no, not at all. No,
Took a shot.
I didn't do any professional Ruby programming until, and only for a few months in 2014. 2014. But yeah, most of my engineer days were programming in C or C++ or C#.
Right. So one question before we move off, and it's to do with the writing. What do you think about the whole editing process and working with editors? And
okay, so I'm gonna tell you a little story. We're not running short on time or anything, are we? Okay. So I have these two wonderful friends, and like super great friends, been friends a long time, get along really well. And with one of these friends, I wanted to like do some programming, like, just like on a weekend, hack up some kind of fun little project. And we got together and we had just perfect pairing chemistry. And it was so delightful and it was so fun and we got so much done. And it was like my brain was augmented by his brain. And it was incredible. Always wonderful to pair program with him. And around the same time, I tried the same kind of thing with another friend, also absolutely wonderful person, but her brain and mine were just constantly grinding gears when we tried to program together. We had zero pairing chemistry, and it just didn't work. So I think, like, my experience with the author-editor relationship is that you need to have good chemistry, good author-editor chemistry. And I had a situation where that really didn't exist. And I ultimately failed to write that book. Like I couldn't finish it. And this isn't saying that, much like this dear friend of mine who is a wonderful person and a wonderful programmer, but like we just didn't have programming chemistry. And so I'm not in any way putting down this other editor, but like we just didn't speak the same language somehow. And it was a very painful process for me. And it just, it didn't come together. The exact opposite happened with Tammy. It was amazing. I had so much fun working on the third edition.
Notice how the sirens come in when he says my name. Yeah. I'm just saying.
It was great. It was a wonderful experience. And so, I feel like, it was luck. It was nothing that, I did to make this work out so well, but I feel like, I don't know, we just got each other. We spoke the same language and things came together beautifully.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I've had great editors and I've had, like other type editor team people that I just, for some reason, they just did rub you the wrong way. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. This is something that I'm thinking a lot about. Like again, as I'm, hiring is very much on my head, in my head right now. Like finding that chemistry for the people on my team and finding someone who I, have that same kind of like manager engineer chemistry with. Like these things are super important. Part of the hiring process is that I have like a pairing session that is completely independent of any kind of like all of the technical evaluations already been done. This isn't about like how much, or how good the solution is, but like just do the two of you enjoy pairing together? Does that feel like it was successful or okay or unsuccessful? And that's really important.
Right. Cool. So we have this new section of the show that we take our authors on technical writers on. And we haven't really got a good name for it. We used to call it our chaos questions, but they're not quite, we haven't quite got a name. So there are pragmatic questions. Let's call it that.
Our show is still evolving. You're guest number
evolving.
2. So
this is
Yeah.
Rev 2, yes. Still in beta, as it were.
we're iterating.
We're iterating, yes. And you get to help us iterate today. So I'll just fire off some questions and you can answer them quickly or take your time. So I'm going to change some of the questions as we go here. But so what would you say was your biggest influence? Person, book, movie?
I would say Alan Watts is probably my biggest influence. Yeah. Alan Watts is or was a philosopher, wrote quite a few books and did lots and lots of lectures, many of which are recorded. I guess in the 50s and 60s predominantly. I sort of don't know where to begin. Some combination of Zen Buddhism and psychedelics, and if you were to mix those things together in the 60s and kind of like Alan Watts drops out, I don't know. But it's it was just really, really profound. There's a series of lectures that he gave called Out of Your Mind. It was 12 lectures. I think each one's about an hour long, so it's about 12 hours. And I would listen to this on my commute back when people commuted, and it was just like completely mind-blowing stuff. And so I started looking for a lot of his other recordings and got some of his books and read those, and
Cool. All right. I'll check them out. What do you like most about your favorite programming language?
So I have to have a favorite programming language.
Well, that's true. It's like Tammy used to ask me once what my favorite color was, and as an artist, I don't have one. So
I mean, favorite programming language is a bit like favorite kid, but I'm going to go with Ruby, I think. And in a lot of ways, it's not my favorite, but it's the language I'm always just going to go back to. If there's just some little thing that I want to write, I'm just like, I have an idea, I want to figure something out, and but it's a little too much to do on paper. I'm just gonna reach for Ruby. It's such an elegant language, such a beautiful language. As I evolved as a programmer, I became much more interested in type checking and type safety and just types in general, in compile time guarantees, which compile time type checking gives you a lot. Doesn't give you everything, of course, but it gives you a lot, and just in general became very interested in static verifiability. What can you know about your programming language just by looking at one line of code? And all of that entire path took me in the exact opposite direction of Ruby, where you can have a line of code that says 2 + 3, and you don't know until runtime what that line of code is going to do, because dynamically you can redefine what addition means.
I redefine what addition means all the
time. And in Ruby you can. But it's just a delightful language. It's just, I don't know, it's it's so comfortable. It's so comfortable for me.
All right. Yeah. Now, you may have already answered this one, but we'll do it anyway. What's your favorite text editor or IDE, and why?
I'm going to give 2 answers. If it's just for random text or whatever, I just go with Sublime Text. I'm not a super, amazing user of it, but I know how to do a fair amount, and it's kind of good enough. Well, okay. So I'll say that's my favorite text editor. My favorite IDE experience that I had. I mean, I don't do a ton of programming anymore, but I'd have to say when I was doing Unity game development in C#, I was using Visual Studio with the ReSharper plugin, and that was amazing. I could not believe how much the IDE anticipated what I was going to say. Like I would write the first, quarter of a line of code and it would be like, oh, like hit tab if you want the rest of the line. And it was correct. And I'm just like, how is it doing this? It was the only time I've ever felt like the computer's really reading my mind, which was, 20% off-putting and 80% delightful. So I feel like I have to put a little nod there to the Visual Studio team of 2013 or 2012, and the ReSharper team. Excellent work.
Cool. All right. If you could choose another profession, what would it be? Eddie Van Halen, right?
Yeah, I mean, like realistically, I was never going to be a rock star, but guitar has actually been like I only like my first guitar is 1 year old. So it's relatively new for me.
Is it electric or acoustic?
It is one of them. That one was acoustic. Okay. I also now have an electric guitar, and a baritone ukulele, and a soprano ukulele, and a tenor guitar. And they're all wonderful, and I love them all. Just been amazed at how important this is to me and how in love I am with playing the guitar. And again, like I'm not good yet, like really not, but I'm just in love with it. And I wish so much that I discovered this when I was 12, instead of 43, but yeah, just absolutely love it. So I'm certain I'd be getting paid a lot less. But yeah, if I could be something else, yeah, I think it would have been like a guitar teacher.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So do you prefer to work alone or with a team?
Well, I mean, work is usually, like for me as an engineering manager, it kind of necessitates having a team. But yeah, I think like being on a good team is just the best. Like, and the last team that I worked on, it was the Ruby agent team. This was the only time that I actually professionally did Ruby. The Ruby agent team at New Relic in 2014, and that was just the best team. Like I loved being on that team and working with the amazing engineers that I worked with. I had a great boss. It was, yeah. I love working with people. Yeah. And I mean, that's ultimately, I love that more than the programming part, which is why like it took me, a decade and a half to realize that, but that's why I'm an engineering manager instead of an engineer now.
Right. Okay. So do you prefer a physical book or an electronic book?
Physical, though I'm a little embarrassed about it. I feel like I should want to look at ebooks, but for me, and this is kind of a dumb reason, but like, I feel like this makes a big difference. When I'm remembering things, I remember them physically, like spatially. And so I can go back and find something in a book by remembering, oh, it was about a quarter way through the book, which I know because I have the physical book and I can see it was about a quarter way through. So I have this like a visual recollection of it. And I remember, like, I always remember which side, like, was it on the left page or the right page? And if it was at the top of the page or the bottom, so I can find things just by like, I usually only have to flip 4 or 5 pages and then I find the thing that I'm looking for. On an ebook, it's like, oh, I can't do that. I guess I could search, but yeah, which is totally better. I don't know. I should do ebooks. I should, but no, I much prefer paper.
Well, I used to use handwritten journals all the time, and I probably have like 20 years of handwritten journals, and it's only been in the last 2, maybe 3 or 4 years that I've been writing things electronically because, like you said, it's so much easier to find. But yeah, I'm the same way. When I remember where I wrote the thing down on the page and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, and I really enjoy that.
So I don't remember why I didn't write this question, but I'm just going to read it.
I thought you did.
No.
I didn't write it because I don't understand this question.
I don't know that either, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Form or function?
Yeah, no, you wrote that question. I don't even know what that question means.
Well, for me, I studied architecture, so form follows function, but form or function, I don't know. Answer it however you like.
Yeah, I want it to be both,
Right.
Like I have a high bar and I'm kind of dissatisfied until I find that perfect thing, like my Stratocaster. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. It's perfectly balanced. It's so comfortable. It sounds beautiful. Like it's all the form and it's all the function that I could possibly want. And that's like, and I just can't get over how much I love it, So yeah, those are the things that I really love, are those things that are both.
It's funny, my whole life I was a Gibson snob, right? I've made guitars, modeled after Gibson, and most of my guitars are Gibson or whatever. But I had to play once at a venue, and somebody had rented equipment, and nobody was singing. So I said, well, I know those songs, I could get up and sing them. And they handed me a Stratocaster, and I'd never even held one in my hands until I'm playing it live on stage. And that's when I realized, oh my God, this thing is so nicely put together. Like it had a baseball bat, like what do you call a baseball bat curve neck, and it was so comfortable. And and the sound, and you could switch up sounds and play different, bridge or pickup or whatever. Yeah. So, All right, pen or pencil?
Oh, pen, 100% pen, easy.
Really?
I don't. I feel like, as a kid, I don't know, maybe like age 8 or younger, I just decided that pencils were garbage and I hated them. And I don't know, they don't write very darkly, or like sometimes they're sharp and then they write dark and thin, and sometimes they're dull and it's like fat and not very dark. And I just I don't know, a pen was like, grown-ups use pens, and so I'm like, I'm going to use a pen, and like I would use a pen to do my math homework, and the teachers were always like, you can't use pen for math because you got to erase stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to do it in my head, and then I'll write it down in pen, and it'll be beautiful. 100% pen.
See,
all the
this
way.
is where Chris and I need to part ways. I think you need to find another editor. Those who don't like pencils.
Well, it's a good thing I didn't have to write it in pencil.
Right?
Well, I was going to tell my favorite space story at this point.
Please.
Yeah. So I when I was a little kid, they were going up to the moon and stuff like that. Or as Tammy likes to say, allegedly went to the moon.
Allegedly, yeah. I don't know.
Well, so and my wife actually, she does crossword puzzles in the bathtub, right? And so she's always like writing on a weird angle. So I got her one of the pens that they use to go zero gravity pen, right?
Yeah.
So she could lie on her back and do crossword puzzles. But so the Americans spent millions and millions of dollars developing a pen that would write in zero gravity, right? By they put pressure in the ink, all that kind of stuff. And the Russians took a pencil.
Yeah.
All right. Star Wars or Star Trek?
I object. I object to this question entirely. These are both incredibly important to me in completely different ways. Like I grew up with Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars came out when I was like 2 years old, I think. Like this was my childhood, and so like the visuals and the music and the sound effects and just this universe is like, it's so important. It's so important to me. Like but like the plot, the story, like it's not good. Like the themes, like it's not good. Like Star Wars isn't good, but it's so important to me. Whereas Star Trek is so good. It's so good. I mean, like, seasons, like 5, 6, and 7 of Next Generation, and so much of Deep Space Nine, the entire second half of Voyager. Like there's just amazing, touching, intense episodes.
I hear a clear winner here.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like, so I will say this, we've like forced our children to watch Star Trek Like, this is important, and you need to do this. And we would never do that with Star Wars. Like, Star Wars, we watch for fun, but Star Trek is like, this is important. This is about people. This is real.
You know, I do a podcast on Star Trek. Never mind.
I know I was on it. Wasn't I on it? Maybe I wasn't on it. I should be on it. Anyway. Anyway, I don't care what your answer is. It's Star Trek.
Should we wrap up, Tammy?
We should wrap up. And I did a terrible job at wrapping up the last show. So I'm going to let you wrap it up this show and show off your... I am, because you know, you're so much better at it than me. So I'm going to let you do it. See, and then I can make fun of you when you don't do it right. Like you made fun of me when I didn't do it right.
Yeah.
I see what happened.
Well, you're supposed to ask him now, like,
all right, I'll
what
ask
he's
him.
working on and that stuff.
Okay. Chris, before we officially wrap up the show and possibly go into an after show, because we're still evolving, who knows if we're going to have an after show, but we are probably going to talk after this anyway. Can you please tell our listeners what you're working on now, besides your book, if there's something you can share with us, you know, your 3rd edition, and more importantly, how our listeners can get in touch with you?
Yeah. Like, honestly, all my spare cycles are going to learning guitar. That's just my thing now. Like, whenever I have a chance, my fingers hurt all the time. Yeah, it's, there's so many different aspects to it. There's so many different angles that you can approach it. There's so many different kinds of music. And I love that there's just like not really right answers. There's something very satisfying about that as someone with a, you know, heavy math background, that there's just like, there's not a right way to play a guitar. There's not a right way to play a note. Like, there are some wrong ways, but there's just so much is open for expression and exploration. And yeah, so that's where all my extra time goes. And I don't know how long that's going to be the case for, but you know, it's been a year and I don't see any chance of that stopping anytime soon. To contact me, you can always email me, Crhis@pine.fm. That's FM like, I don't know, Fred Meyer. I never learned the Alpha Tango Bravo things. Or on Twitter. I mean, I'm basically never on Twitter, but I'm other Chris Pine on Twitter.
So I'm gonna do this, and Tammy's gonna cut in the corrections.
I am. Am I
which is
really?
gonna sound so much funner than what I'm gonna do. But
Funner? Wait,
Yeah,
the
funner.
editor in me is like cringing. Funner,
Oh my God.
more fun.
yes, and so I'm gonna read. So I sent the script off to my sound my voiceover guy, and he did one for Tammy, but she never used it. But at least I have the script now. So there we go. So here goes. Well, that wraps up another episode of.
Oh, am I supposed to put the show name in here?
Yeah, so name. Let's start again. Well, that wraps up another episode of
The Pragmatic Hero's Journey.
And you can find us on the web at.
I don't know.
And we might be on Twitter. We might be on Facebook as. We don't
Prag
know.
Prog. No, we are on Twitter, Prag Prog.
All right. So if you enjoy the podcast, please consider writing a review on iTunes, sharing a link on social media. Go ahead. Let the world know we're out there.
Oh, well, I have loved this conversation. I'm so happy that you were able to join us and put up with all of our outro scripting things and whatnot. We're still evolving as a show, and I appreciate the listeners for sticking with us, and I hope that they have enjoyed the show. And Chris, you are welcome to come up with a new book and write with us anytime. I will certainly, edit your book if you'd like. We'll find you another editor if you wouldn't like. But for people listening out there, if there's something that you want to write about, send us a message and let's chat.
Thanks for listening to the Pragmatic Hero's Journey. We hope you enjoyed the show. For more information about the Pragmatic Hero's Journey, please visit pragprog.com or send an email to pragtalk@pragprog.org. Your hero's journey has just begun.